Have you ever known someone who seemed to have everything, beauty, charm, and the admiration of everyone, but secretly carried a burden so heavy it almost crushed her? This is the story of Amara. In the busy, sun-filled town of Aiyetoro, nestled beside a wide, gently flowing river and surrounded by green hills, lived Amara. Aiyetoro was a town where everybody knew everybody. Laughter often floated from the market stalls, the smell of roasted corn mixed with spices filled the air, and the golden sunsets wrapped the town in warmth each evening. But even in such a lively place, Amara stood out. From the time she blossomed into a young woman, her beauty became legendary. Her skin was smooth and dark like polished ebony, glowing under the sunlight. Her smile could light up the entire market square and soften even the hardest hearts. Her eyes, deep, almond-shaped, and filled with quiet kindness, seemed to see straight into your soul. Strangers would pause just to watch her pass. Mothers pointed her out to their daughters as an example of grace. Fathers secretly hoped their sons would be lucky enough to marry her. Amara was the jewel of Aiyetoro, a rare flower in full bloom. Men came from near and far, from Lagos, from Or, even from distant Akure, dressed in their finest, carrying gifts of yams, fabrics, jewelry, and promises of wealth, hoping to win her heart and make her their wife. Some were farmers, others traders, and a few were educated men with dreams of moving to the city. But Amara gently turned all of them away. To the townspeople, it seemed as though she was simply choosy, waiting for the perfect suitor. They whispered that she had high standards or perhaps had made a secret vow not to marry too early. But the truth was far darker and lonelier. Amara carried a secret that weighed on her soul every waking moment. Deep inside her was a burning need she could not control. It wasn't the ordinary longing for love or companionship, though, like any young woman, she desired those things too. No, this was something else entirely. It started when she was 15, a strange, burning hunger that would not leave. At first, she thought it was just a phase or the confusion of growing up. But the feeling only grew stronger, clutching at her day and night. It felt like a fire burning under her skin, an itch she could never scratch, a hunger that refused to be filled. To quiet the storm inside her, Amara began meeting men. It wasn't out of love or passion, it was desperation. She thought maybe just once would ease the pain, but once turned into twice, then many more. By the time she was 25, the secret life she led had consumed her. She had lost count of how many men she had been with, from her own town, nearby villages, and even travelers passing through. Sometimes, when the burning feeling became too much to bear, she did the unthinkable. She paid men to be with her. Not for romance, not for connection, only for brief moments of relief from the ache that tormented her endlessly. She felt crushed by guilt and shame. In the eyes of Aiyetoro, she was still a pure, untouched maiden, but only she knew the truth of the double life she lived. She tried everything to rid herself of the affliction. She visited herbalists in the next town, drank bitter concoctions made from roots and barks. She knelt before wise elders who prayed for her and gave her charms. She fasted, cried, and begged God for mercy under the moonlight. But nothing worked. No matter what she did, the hunger always returned, fiercer and more demanding than before. Her only relief, her only safe space, was with her two closest friends, Bola and Kyoma. The three had grown up together like sisters. They had bathed in the river as little girls, sold roasted groundnuts together at the market, and shared dreams under the stars. When Amara could no longer bear the secret alone, she confided in them. With tears streaming down her face, she told them everything, how the hunger controlled her, how ashamed she felt, and how terrified she was of her future. Bola, ever the gentle and loyal one, held her close and promised never to betray her secret. "I'm with you," she whispered. "No matter what." Kyoma also swore her support, her expression soft and sympathetic. Yet, sometimes, when Amara spoke of how men still chased after her despite everything, she noticed something flicker in Kyoma's eyes, a shadow of something she couldn't quite name. Was it jealousy? Was it curiosity? Amara wasn't sure, but she brushed the thought aside. She needed her friends too much. What Amara didn't fully understand, and what most people around her could never imagine, was that she was struggling with something called compulsive sexual behavior disorder, also known as hypersexuality. This is a real medical condition where a person feels very strong and uncontrollable sexual urges, thoughts, or behaviors. For Amara, it was not about love, pleasure, or even desire in the way people normally think. It was about calming a deep, painful itch inside her that wouldn't go away. People with this condition, like Amara, feel driven to act on these urges repeatedly even when they don't want to, and even when it causes shame, sadness, or problems in their lives. Amara often felt a little relief after seeing someone, but soon enough, the powerful need would return, pulling her back into the same cycle again and again. Amara had tried everything she knew to stop, visiting healers, praying, even fasting. But no one around her understood that this was not just about willpower. It was a health condition, something that needed understanding and care, just like any other medical problem. At home, things became harder. Her parents, strict but loving, were growing restless. Her mother, a tall, graceful woman always wrapped in fine ankara, often sat beside her, voice gentle but firm. "Amara, my child," she would say, stroking her daughter's braided hair, "you have beauty, you have grace. Suitors are coming every week. Why do you refuse them all? A woman must settle down. Time is not waiting." Her father, a respected palm wine tapper, said little but watched her closely, concern lining his face. They didn't understand that she wasn't rejecting men because she didn't want marriage, she was terrified. How could she promise herself to one man when she couldn't even control her own body? How could she vow faithfulness when her compulsion might drive her into ruin the moment she said "I do"? The secret created a wall between Amara and her family, and slowly, between her and the world. Though surrounded by people, she had never felt more alone. But something was about to shift. Life, as it always does, was preparing to test Amara in ways she could never imagine, and soon, secrets would not stay hidden. One hot afternoon, the sun sat high in the sky, pouring heat over Aiyetoro. Amara hurried through the narrow market paths, her heart racing. She had just left another secret meeting, the kind that always left her feeling empty and ashamed. As she rushed, her foot caught on a small stone near the town square. She stumbled and fell, her basket spilling yam, tomatoes, and dried fish onto the dusty ground. People nearby turned to look. Amara's face burned with embarrassment. She quickly dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather her things before anyone asked questions. Before she could finish, a young man bent beside her and began helping. He moved calmly and gently, not rushing or staring like others often did. "Be careful," he said softly, handing her a bunch of tomatoes. "Are you all right?" Amara glanced up. His eyes were deep and kind, full of quiet understanding. His voice was warm, without judgment. His name, she soon learned, was David. He was a carpenter who had recently moved to Aiyetoro. People spoke well of him, not just for the fine chairs and doors he made, but also because of his honesty and calm spirit. Amara, still flustered and worried someone might guess where she had come from, muttered a quick thank you. But even as she gathered her things and hurried away, something inside her stirred. His simple kindness, given without asking for anything in return, touched a part of her heart that had long been buried under shame. It felt like a small spark of hope, not the sharp, painful hunger she usually felt, but something gentle and warm. David didn't forget her. He came to see her again, visiting her family's stall at the market. Slowly, they began to talk. Their chats were easy and full of laughter. David shared his dreams of building a small house with his own hands, of having a family built on respect and trust. He spoke about wanting peace, not just in his home but in his heart. Amara listened, her heart softening with every word. He didn't just notice her beauty, many men did that. David saw something deeper. He noticed the sadness behind her smile, the quiet heaviness she carried but never spoke of. His steady presence became a safe place for her. For the first time, Amara felt something she had never known before, love that was calm, patient, and true. She fell deeply for him. And, as if by a miracle, David fell in love with her too. His love felt like a rope thrown to someone drowning. A lifeline. Maybe, Amara thought, just maybe, this strong love could finally cool the fire burning inside her. Maybe she could be free. They spent more time together. David would walk her home, sit with her family, and talk about their future. Amara began to imagine a life she had long given up on, a simple, happy home where she could be a good wife, where she wouldn't have to lie or hide. For a while, she felt strong. Strong enough to fight the urges that had controlled her since she was a teenager. But the fire didn't go away. Even with David's warm love wrapping around her, the need still whispered inside her, sharp and stubborn. It was like trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. No matter how much she prayed or hoped, the feelings returned, heavy and demanding. She tried to fight it. She truly did. She would wake up each morning promising herself, "Today, I will be faithful. Today, I will not fall." But some days, the pressure inside her chest built too high. It became hard to breathe, hard to think. On those days, she would slip away, quietly and quickly. She would meet strangers, trying to calm the storm in her body even if it was just for a short time. No one knew how hard she was fighting. No one saw the battles happening inside her every single day. To the world, she was still Amara, beautiful, calm, loved by a good man. But inside, she was breaking. One beautiful evening, the sky stretched wide and dark above Aiyetoro, filled with twinkling stars that looked like tiny lamps hanging in the heavens. A soft breeze rustled the trees, and the air smelled sweet from the flowers blooming nearby. David and Amara sat together under the open sky, their fingers gently laced. The world around them felt quiet and safe. David turned to her, his eyes full of deep love. He took her hands firmly but gently. "Amara," he said in his calm, steady voice, "I love you. I respect you. You are the woman I want to build my life with. You are my peace, my joy. I don't care about your past. All I know is, I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Then, slowly, David got down on one knee. His voice didn't shake. His face was serious but full of hope. He brought out a small, shiny ring that sparkled even under the dim light of the stars. "Amara," he asked, his voice rich and steady, "will you marry me?" Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her heart pounded hard against her chest. For a moment, she couldn't move. Joy burst inside her like sunlight breaking through thick clouds. But behind that joy, a sharp fear pricked her heart. What if he finds out? What if my secret destroys everything? She wondered. With tears spilling down her cheeks, she whispered, "Yes, David. Yes, I will marry you." David smiled, standing up and slipping the ring onto her finger. They held each other close, hearts beating fast, as the stars above seemed to twinkle brighter in blessing. The next day, Amara couldn't wait to tell her best friends, Bola and Kyoma. They had been friends since childhood, always meeting by the old riverbank under the tall palm trees. That afternoon, she ran to meet them, her steps light, her face glowing. When they gathered, Amara stretched out her hand and showed them her engagement ring. It sparkled in the sunlight. Bola gasped and hugged Amara tightly. Tears filled her eyes as she laughed with joy. "Ah, Amara, I'm so happy for you," she cried, squeezing her friend warmly. Kyoma smiled too, her lips curling politely. "Congratulations, Amara," she said sweetly. But inside her chest, her heart twisted tightly with jealousy. Kyoma had always stood in Amara's shadow. Growing up, people always praised Amara's beauty, her bright smile, and her charm. Suitors often gathered around her, while Kyoma sat quietly to the side, unnoticed. She had struggled to find a man who truly loved her. Many men overlooked her simple looks, and she often felt invisible. Now, watching Amara, who had been with many men and carried a secret flaw, getting a man as perfect as David, it burned deep in Kyoma's heart. How does she get everything? Kyoma thought bitterly. She's been with half the town, yet she gets the perfect man, the perfect wedding, while I have nothing? As the jealousy swirled and grew heavier, Kyoma made a quiet, dangerous decision. Amara didn't deserve this happiness, she told herself. She didn't deserve a man like David. In secret, Kyoma followed Amara. She waited for those weak moments when Amara gave in to her hidden urges. Using her phone, Kyoma recorded short videos of Amara during her private encounters with other men. She kept these recordings safe, planning something cruel that she believed was only fair. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The sky was clear and bright, with soft clouds drifting lazily. Aiyetoro buzzed with excitement. Everyone talked about the wedding of Amara and David. The celebration hall was full of colorful fabrics, bright Ankara patterns draped across the chairs, fresh flowers lined the tables, and soft music floated through the air. People filled every seat, dressed in their finest clothes, their faces shining with happiness. Amara looked like a dream in her white wedding gown. Her skin glowed, her smile stretched wide, and her eyes sparkled with joy. David stood beside her in a clean, well-fitted suit. He looked proud and happy, holding her hand gently. Friends and family gathered around, clapping and smiling as they waited to witness their vows. At the front of the hall stood a large screen. It had been set up to show sweet photos of David and Amara, their courtship, their smiles, and the happy moments they had shared. As the officiant began speaking, Amara and David faced each other, ready to exchange vows. The hall fell quiet, full of love and hope. Then, suddenly, the screen flickered. The cheerful music stopped. People turned their heads, confused. The screen lit up again, but instead of happy photos, something shocking appeared. Videos started playing. Not of their courtship, but of Amara. In different places, with different men. Clear, sharp images that left no doubt about what was happening. The crowd gasped loudly. Hands flew to mouths. Mothers shook their heads, fathers frowned deeply. The joyful atmosphere shattered instantly. Murmurs rose like a wave as people turned to stare at Amara in shock and disbelief. David's face drained of all color. His mouth dropped slightly open, and his hands fell from Amara's. The love and pride that had filled his eyes just moments before vanished, replaced by confusion, shock, and deep hurt. Amara stood frozen. Her breath caught in her chest. Her ears rang as if the room had gone silent, though she could still hear whispers and gasps all around her. Her secret was out. Her deepest shame, shown to the entire town, on the most important day of her life. David didn't say anything. He simply turned and walked out of the hall, his back stiff with pain and betrayal. Amara ran after him, calling his name, tears blinding her, begging him to understand. But the hurt was too deep, too public. David got into his truck and drove away, leaving Amara sobbing in the middle of the road, her dream shattered. Bola rushed to her side, shielding her from the judgmental stares, helping her into a car, and taking her home. The days that followed were filled with grief and shame. Amara knew her secret was a heavy burden, but she never imagined it would be exposed so cruelly, ruining the best thing that had ever happened to her. The town was full of gossip. Amara felt like a prisoner in her own home. But through the pain, a determination grew inside her. She couldn't live like this anymore. The exposure, though painful, was a turning point. She had to face her fire head-on, not just hide it. Meanwhile, Kyoma thought she had cleared the way for herself. She tried to get David's attention by offering comfort, hoping he would turn to her instead. But David was heartbroken and disappointed. He wanted nothing to do with Amara's world, including her friends. He saw Kyoma's actions as selfish and unkind, and he firmly pushed her away. With Bola always by her side, Amara traveled to a faraway city to see a special doctor. The doctor finally gave a name to her condition and showed her a way to heal. It was a long and difficult journey with therapy and medicine. There were hard days, setbacks, and moments when she wanted to give up, but slowly, Amara started getting better. She began to understand why she behaved the way she did and learned how to manage it. She was fighting for her life and her future. Months later, a letter came from David. He said the pain and shock from that day were huge, but over time, he began to understand more. He had read about conditions like Amara's and realized it wasn't just a bad habit, it was a real problem. Though he was still hurt, he said he still cared about her and hoped she was getting help. He wrote his phone number and told her to call if she was ready. With shaking hands and a heart full of fear and hope, Amara called him. Their conversation was long. At first, it was careful and quiet. But then, they spoke honestly. Amara told him everything, her struggle, her shame, and how she was getting better. David shared his pain too, but he also said he still had love for her. Slowly, they started again. David supported her healing, and their love began to grow again, this time built on truth and trust. Kyoma began to feel deep guilt. Seeing Amara trying to rebuild her life, and realizing David would never love her, she felt the full weight of her actions. She went to Amara, crying, and told her everything she had done. She begged for forgiveness. Amara, now stronger and more understanding from her own healing, forgave her. But the trust between them was broken. The friendship could never go back to how it used to be. In time, Amara and David got married. It was a small, quiet wedding filled with real love. Bola stood proudly beside Amara as her chief bridesmaid, her loyalty shining through everything. Amara and David started their new life in Aiyetoro, ready to face the future together. They knew healing was not a one-time thing, but a journey they would walk through hand in hand. Amara's story teaches us some important lessons. Hiding secrets, especially ones we're ashamed of, can cause big problems when they finally come out. The best way to heal is to face our problems, ask for help, and be honest even when it's hard. Another big lesson is to be very careful about who we trust with our private struggles. Jealousy can change even a close friend into someone who hurts us. Sometimes, the safest thing is to keep our secrets to ourselves until we find people who truly love and support us, people who have proven they can be trusted. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope it touched you and left you with something to reflect on. If it did, don't just scroll past, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to catch more deep, thought-provoking stories like this one. To my returning subscribers, hey. Thank you for always coming back. Your support means everything to me, and I don't take it for granted. Leave a comment below what part of Amara's story touched you the most. Or have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be jealous? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, share, and spread the message. Let's keep learning, healing, and growing together. See you in the next video. Bye for now.